So I've got my MudUK panel installed. It's okay, it's just a quick fix. I wanted to see what one of these double DIN radio units was like. It seems to be pretty good. It's cheap, but I found out they're cheap for a reason, because they haven't got the maps in or no access to them. I haven't got a storage card with it in, so if anybody knows how to do it, give me a call. But anyway, but apart from that, somebody asked me about this panel and how to install it. Now I've only got this at its basics, and one of the reasons why I bought this unit was because it's got just about everything that I need. It's got a clock, it's got a GPS in it, if it will work, it's got a radio in it, reversing camera, if I need that, but it's got, you know, like, you can put memory cards in and an auxiliary input. That's pretty good. You can do all sorts of things with it, and it was cheap, $120. But like I say, the problem with that was that it's got no it's got no GPS maps, which is why it's cheap. So pay that little bit extra, get one with the maps on, because I'm struggling to find out how to get maps onto this unit. Apart from that, what else have I got into this? I got my hazard switch, which didn't turn out too good because the clip broke and I tried to epoxy it in and the epoxy moved as I was gluing it, but that seems to work okay. I've got my hazard switch up there, which is, you can see. I did want to point out that although the switch looks a bit offset, it's actually the badge that's offset and not me. This is a temporary heater switch because I wanted a double Carling switch to fit into there, but I haven't got one yet, so I just got a little hole in there and the switch is epoxied in. I bought this lot, this here, and this, let me see, this double USB connection in a packet. There's like 3 of them in line, and like I say, later in the video I'll show you how to drill the holes and put those in. They're nice. They were about $20 for everything, so it's got a nice little voltmeter down there. I mean, the battery's a little bit low. I'm not really one for putting worry gauges in and things like this. I've got my hour meter up there, temperature, petrol, fuel gauge, and that's about it. So I'm kind of stuck what to put up here. I don't want to put too much, but well, you never know what other people might put in the future, so we'll leave it. But it does serve a purpose. So let me show you how to put this in. Now, it's going to be a sort of mishmash of videos that I've done over the last 6 weeks, because I didn't do this like as a proper full-time video, if you see what I mean. It wasn't a subject, so just bear with me and we'll go through it. But what I'll do is I'll take this panel off and let you have a look inside. So this is the inside of my mud panel, and I've tried to keep things as neat as possible by putting a few cable ties around things and tying up the loose wires so they don't touch, heat shrink and things like this. There's a few spare wires going to the back, which I'll show you in a later video. There's a little fuse box. I've got one side's permanently live and one side goes through the ignition, and there's some spare fuses. Now this is joined together at both sides at the back, so these 2 fuses serve one purpose and these 2 fuses serve another, but there's possibility to put more power into there, so that's okay. You know, like I say, very small, very neat. Don't go for those CD type player units, because quite frankly nobody uses CDs anymore, and then we put one in once before, we ended up having to cut all this dash out and make a special unit, and it wasn't worth it. As I mentioned in my video later on, that I haven't got that grey panel that goes across the back. I can't get hold of one, so I just screwed this straight to the metalwork. But one thing I did want to make clear, that in the later video later on, that I didn't say, that this panel here is off a TD5, and this panel I got from MudUK is for a 300 TDI. Now I had to notch this out a little bit down here. No big deal, I just cut it out with a pair of tin snips and it fitted perfectly. But I had a few problems with the screws, so what I did was I put some little tack welds in, and I know I'll be repeating myself later on, but I might have missed some bits out, and then I just screwed that box in once I'd cut the front out. And again, there's my centre line. Mark your centre line out and leave 3/4 of an inch either side, and it's done. Now, one of the things I did was a little upgrade. Sounds a bit cheap, but under here and these bits here, I just injected some spray foam, and that makes it a bit more rigid because there's only a little screw right down here, and spray foam just takes up that space and makes it nice. So that's the outside. Sorry, that's the inside. So let's go and have a look at some Carling switches. This is a typical Carling switch on-off, kind of common. Nice, well-made switches. A little bit expensive for what they are, but that's all you get for your money. Now, one thing I wanted to tell you, which is important, and what this piece does here, is that a lot of people wire these switches with connectors directly onto the backs of the switches. Well, that's okay until you want to take that MudUK panel off and do some work on it, and then you'll have 4 wires there all dangling about doing nothing. Now, if you were to do a hazard switch and it's got about 6 wires on, or 6 or 7, then you're going to get mixed up. So what you need is these little things here, and these are plugs that plug into the back of here, but you can see the connectors. So you put your wires onto connectors and then into this socket here, and then that plugs onto there, so no matter how many times you take it on and off, the wires are always going to be in the right position. And there's plenty enough space there to write on the side a little label with what it does. And even on the side of here, even if you put like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, you won't get them mixed up. So that's a little thing. Over here, I took an experiment and got some Chinese ones. These are Chinese switches. Now, all they've got to do is switch on and off a relay, really, for me. I mean, that's all they actually do. It doesn't really matter. But the difference between the two, apart from being quarter of the price, they look absolutely identical. But you can go online and get all these pre-labelled light switches. So, for example, this one's for roof lights, and that one there's for rear lights. Whereas these you have to get a little sticky thing to put on here, which seems a bit cheap. I like this idea. It's got the lettering already on it, and like I say, for quarter of the price. Well, I know where my money's going. So, what can you do with these switches to make them look nice? Well, putting them directly into a panel doesn't leave you much room for messing about. There is not much there when you cut the panel. So they come up with this idea. There's a single, there's a double, and this is a connector block, so you can put them all the way across and then put a couple of these end caps on, and these, wait a minute, there we go, they just slide out and make a nice finish. However, don't get them mixed up with Chinese ones, because the Chinese ones don't taper into Carling switches, and you can see there's a little bit difference in height, so there's something to watch for. So I'm about to fit this MudUK panel, and I've sort of marked out where the centre line is, and you see there's some holes down there, so you can't really go wrong. My sort of issue is that I haven't got that grey panel to fit onto here. It's no big deal. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Nobody will bother. However, one observation I have made is that if I put that into the corner, well, it's going to be tricky to do with one hand, but that screw hole there is right on top of this panel. You see what I mean? So that means it's going to miss the steel. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that hole down there. I'm going to get my punch out and punch 2 more holes, one in here and one in here, so that fits together a lot better before I cut it. Then I can drop it in and try it, and it should be good. Very tempted to put a tack of weld in these corners and then just drop that panel in and then screw it in. I don't know. I've had no troubles with it really with them in the past, but I've always fitted them to you know, regular cars that have had that plastic trim in, and I sort of didn't realise that that is very, very close. So I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll put a little tack weld on that and then get that assembly up and running, and then find out where I'm going to actually put the panel, because you can move them left and right. It doesn't have to be in the centre. I don't think so. I don't think it makes much of a difference. I think it's only for here. Anyway, we'll see. I'll just make it up as I go along, really. So I got the mounting frame in. I put some little tack welds in these corners, and then I lined up the holes, and I drilled 2 new holes at the bottom here so it would go into the metal, and now it's nice and really, really strong. So I like that. I've got all the wires through. That's for my hazards, and that's for my heater. I've got a lot more space to put bits and pieces in there. The next thing is to mark out this panel, because it isn't marked for the drill holes for here. So what we're going to do for that, which is they say in the book, but I've worked it out myself, is you put your panel on, and then through the end there you just mark the centre of those with your marker pen, and then we should have that, and then it'll go like this, and everything should be nice and snug. So that's going to work out nice. So we'll get that done. Getting your switches and bits and pieces to line up perfect in your panel can be a bit of a challenge. But there is an easy way to do it. You get a bit of tape, stick it over where you want to be. You'll have to go into your old school bag that's hanging on the wall somewhere and get your dividers out, or compass, whatever you want to call them. The thing is that you really want one with a pencil on to make this effective, but it'll still work. So what you want to do is sort of guess where the rough centre is and scribe it. just like being at school. Scribe it, scribe it, scribe it, and scribe it. And you can see here where the lines dissect. So there's line going that way, line going that way, right in the middle of here. And there is our hole. Well, that's where the hole wants to be. So we're going to check that again. So there, 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 and there. So that's where it needs to be. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to run a pilot hole through, because the plastic has a habit of jumping. And the plastic is quite thick. So let me get another drill that is the same size as this, which I think I've got over here. That'll do. Open that hole out a little bit more. You see how it bites? It pulls in. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one. I bought the other day a hole saw for woodworking. It's ideal to use on plastic, and these are supposed to be bimetal, so they'll cut through steel as well. So I tested it by drilling a hole in a piece of wood first, and then we're going to get our fitting, or connection, whatever you want to call it. Take it out of there, and that fits kind of snug. It's a little bit tight, but it fits in. Now that gives us a bit of room to get the Dremel in if we're a little bit off, which we're not going to be, are we? Like I said, these were only $6. They're cheap as chips, and you can, and it comes with the arbor as well, or the, you know, everything. Wow, that's really good. But you can do these with a hole saw, or you can do them with a file, Dremel, you name it, you can do it. So I'm going to set the drill onto low speed, lock it up, and here goes. Too late now. Take off the tape and you don't have any stuff anywhere. Let's try the fitting in. There we go, that's not looking too bad at all. Don't go away quite yet. I did notice when I did the hole I was a fraction of a millimetre too low. So I just got the old friendly die grinder out and moved this up slightly, because if you can remember this was a bit tight to go in. So I biased it towards the top, and as you can see now it's smack plumb in the middle. So trying to make Land Rovers better, but sometimes the medicine doesn't work. Talk to you later. I mentioned on a previous video about running wires from front to the back of the vehicle, and this is a great time to check this out, because what I'd put here was a big grommet going through the bulkhead at the back of the fuse box, and from there you can pass your cable up into your MudUK panel, and that's got 9 cables in it. It is actually, let's see, I did read it earlier, now I've forgotten. It is 16 gauge, American style 16 gauge wiring, which is quite good for a lot of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run that wire down along the top of the frame. That's why I haven't put the floor in yet. So that's going to go across there, and then I'm going to put a distribution box, a waterproof one, but I'm going to put it on the inside. So the cable's going to come up through here onto here and go. I'll put some speakers up in this top corner, and that gives me ample enough room if I want to put lights or anything else like that in here, or any other switches or bits and bobs. I'll have 9 wires come up through this waterproof box, which is nice. Now I was going to put my speakers in this side like I did on my 130, but I can't because I've got the filler, the fuel filler going through here, and also I haven't got the seat belts in yet. So I'm stuck for space. So I'm going to make some brackets and put the squeakers up here. Squeakers. My cousin used to call them squeakers. She still does. She's 40 odd now. Should know better. So running wires, yeah. So I'll do it all up, and you can see how easy it is. But look at that. Isn't that a lot neater than doing hundreds of little wires and taping and doing stuff all over the place? So just a couple of ideas what you can do. Let's see what it looks like when it's all finished. I hate these crimp connectors. They never seem to crimp properly. Sometimes you can get away with it, but generally speaking, even though I've got a professional crimper, they're never quite right. So I'm doing the grounds on this panel. And what I'm doing is I've got my extended fuse box in there. I'll mention that later. But that wire comes up through here, and I've got some spares which I've tied up. But what I'm going to do, just to make sure, like belt and braces ground, I love ground, can't get enough ground. I'm going to solder that eyelet onto there, and then that's going to screw into the corner, which is onto the bulkhead. And then the other tail end of the wire is going to go into this black connector here, which is another common feed. So it's actually got 2 bites of the cherry. Can't get enough ground. Now if you look at this panel here, I've got my wires coming through. I've got my speaker wires coming through the first 4, and then I've got 4 spares. But what I've done here, if you can see, I've put the ground on separate but on a bigger connector. And the reason for that is that if any of these 4 wires here I've got a ground, instead of putting the grounds on the body or wherever you want to put it, I can run them back and come to here. Then I know I've got a good positive ground. And all these are all soldered ends, so you've got a nice good positive connection. So I've got that to do, a bit more tidying up. I've got the panel in. I'm going to put a little mini fuse box up here to power these units here, But after that it's very simple. So the wiring should be done shortly, and that'll be another job done.